Imagine walking into a room. There are no pictures on the walls. No open windows. Absolute silence. And in the middle of it all, a man is hunched over a computer. He's wearing heavy-duty noise-canceling headphones. And weirdly enough, he has a blindfold on. But hold on, the blindfold isn't even the craziest part. If you look closely at his laptop, you'll see the internet cable port is completely filled with superglue. He intentionally disabled his own ability to connect to the web permanently. You'd probably think he's a prisoner, right? Or maybe some madman performing a bizarre ritual? Nope, that's Jonathan Franzen, one of America's greatest living novelists. And at that very moment, he was writing The Corrections, the exact book that would go on to win him the National Book Award and make him millions of dollars. Franzen hadn't lost his mind. And he didn't do this because he was some hyper-disciplined monk. He did it because he was terrified. He was scared to death of failing his own potential. And he absolutely knew, that if left to his own devices, his willpower wouldn't stand a chance against a dial-up connection. He was smart enough to recognize a harsh truth that most of us lie to ourselves about every single day. Human willpower is incredibly fragile. And honestly, kind of useless. I'll be completely honest with you. I used to be entirely bought into toxic hustle culture. I actually believed that if I couldn't finish my work, or if I wasn't hitting my revenue goals, it was entirely my fault. I thought I was just undisciplined. I used to leave my phone right next to my keyboard, telling myself, I'm only going to check for that one important client email. And you know exactly what happens next. 45 minutes later, I'm slumped in my chair watching a guy build a swimming pool out of mud in the jungle on YouTube. All while my deadlines are literally breathing down my neck. I beat myself up over it constantly. I promised myself I'd try harder tomorrow. But I always lost. It took me a long time to realize that I wasn't losing because I was weak. I was treating my phone like a tool, when in reality, it's a tiny casino in my pocket. Apps like TikTok and Instagram aren't just software. They are slot machines engineered by top behavioral economists to drain our cognitive load. It's a rigged game, and I was bringing a pocket knife to a heavy artillery fight. And this is exactly where the second core philosophy of James Clear's Atomic Habits steps in. It completely dismantles all the cliché self-help advice you've probably heard 1,000 times over. I'm not going to quote the book at you like a college professor. But his mindset essentially boils down to this. Stop trying to be an iron-willed superhero in a room full of temptations. Become the architect of your own environment instead. You see, wealthy people, high-level executives, and million-dollar founders, they don't waste their energy resisting distraction. They don't check Slack or email in the morning, not because they have superhuman discipline, but because they have created extreme friction between themselves and the outside world during their peak creative hours. They design what I call a deep work sanctuary. In this space, we don't rely on being hardworking. We rely on designing laziness. Let me explain. I didn't start going to the gym because I became a disciplined person overnight. I started because I put my running shoes directly in front of my bedroom door. I quite literally had to trip over them to go to the bathroom. I made failing more difficult than succeeding. I put good friction in the way of my laziness. So, take a look around you right now. Not at your goals, but at the room you're sitting in. Is it designed for you to win? Or are you just fighting a battle you've already lost? Let's figure out how to stop fighting the environment and start rigging the game in our favor. We often underestimate what we can do in a single day, yet we wildly overestimate what we can achieve in 10 years. The truth is, there is no destined moment coming to rescue your career. No perfect Notion dashboard, and no tutorial video can perform the hardest task for you, facing yourself. Most people fail because they are paralyzed by the gap, that massive, daunting distance between where they are now and their million-dollar goals. Staring into that void only leads to burnout, forcing you to seek junk dopamine from social media just to escape the pressure. But when you commit to that first 2-minute ritual, you are choosing to focus on the gain. It is a small, visceral, and immediate victory. This progress triggers natural dopamine, the sustainable fuel you need to anchor a new identity. Page Condensed doesn't exist to give you more abstract theories. We are here to help you deconstruct the most complex algorithm in the world, your own mind. If the perspectives on friction, activation energy, and identity resonated with you today, then perhaps we belong to the same tribe. Those who don't just want to be busy, but want to master the game with surgical precision. Don't view this as advice. View it as a blueprint. Change exactly one thing on your desk tonight. Negotiate for exactly 120 seconds tomorrow morning. Because at the end of the day, the world doesn't pay you for what you know. The world pays you for what you consistently execute, when no one is watching. I am Julian, and this is Page Condensed. I'll see you in the next blueprint. So, you've cleared your desk. You've trapped your laziness with friction. But then, you fall into a much more sophisticated trap. You spend 3 days perfecting your Notion dashboard. You color code your task labels and obsess over the perfect workflow. You feel incredibly productive, but in reality, you haven't written a single line of code. You haven't drafted a single script. This is productive procrastination. You are using preparation as a shield to avoid the terrifying reality of actually starting. This is where James Clear introduces his most misunderstood weapon, the 2-minute rule. Many people mistake this for David Allen's rule about doing small tasks immediately. But Clear's version is a masterpiece of behavioral chemistry. It states, when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. Running 5 miles becomes putting on your running shoes. Writing a book becomes writing one single sentence. Building a new income stream becomes opening a blank document and typing a title. It sounds almost insulting, doesn't it? How does typing one sentence make you wealthy? But here is the scientific rebuttal. This isn't a productivity tip, it's about activation energy. In chemistry, this is the minimum energy required to trigger a reaction. Once the reaction starts, it often becomes self-sustaining. Your brain is currently in a state of rest, and it wants to stay there. The 2-minute rule isn't designed to complete the work. It is the spark that provides just enough activation energy to break the static friction of your life. But there's a layer even deeper than physics. This is about an identity shift. In the West, identity is the engine of change. If you say, I am trying to write, you are an amateur struggling with a task. But when you perform that 2-minute ritual of opening your document every single morning, you are sending a visceral signal to your subconscious. I am a writer. You aren't trying to build a business. You are a person who shows up and executes. The 2-minute rule masters the skill of showing up. Once you've ritualized the beginning, you enter the flow state. You've already cleared the hardest hurdle, the first 120 seconds. In the world of finance, we worship compound interest. Habits work the same way. These 2-minute actions are your seed capital. By repeating the act of showing up, you aren't just doing a task, you're compounding a new version of yourself. High performers don't believe in overnight success. They believe in systems that make the right identity inevitable. They know that whoever masters the first 2 minutes, masters the entire game. So, look at your perfectly organized lists. Look at your research. And ask yourself if you're actually moving, or just running in place. Success doesn't require a heroic leap. It just requires the courage to negotiate with your own brain, for exactly 120 seconds. Let me tell you about a brilliant little hack Google pulled off at their New York office. They realized their employees were eating way too many free M&Ms and gaining weight. Now, they didn't put up aggressive warning signs. They didn't ban candy or lecture anyone about health. They just swapped the transparent glass Hoo jars for opaque ones with lids. That was it. If you wanted chocolate, you couldn't just see it and grab it. You had to reach out and lift the lid. And that tiny fraction of a second extra movement added just enough friction to make people's brains pause. The result? M&M consumption dropped by millions of pieces a month. No one had to use willpower. They were simply too lazy to lift a lid. The smartest entities on Earth understand this perfectly. They spend millions on behavioral economics to do one thing: reduce friction for your worst habits. They want spending money and mindlessly scrolling on your phone to be entirely effortless. But here is where we all fail. While distraction has become as easy as breathing, the high-leverage activities, the things that actually grow your career or build your wealth, are absolutely loaded with friction. But here is the real counter-argument to toxic hustle culture. We often fail at step 5 not because we lack willpower, but because we've already burned through all our decision-making energy on steps 1 through 4. Psychologists call this decision fatigue. Every time you have to decide to ignore a notification, decide to start working, or decide what file to open, you drain your battery. Designing your environment is not about being strict. It is simply a strategy to preserve your mental energy for the high-level decisions that actually generate income. I used to beat myself up over my lack of discipline, until I asked myself, why not use that exact human laziness as a weapon? If tech companies can use low friction to steal my focus, why shouldn't I use high friction to protect my potential? This is exactly how million-dollar founders and high-performing executives design their lives. They aren't constantly fighting themselves to be disciplined. They are just masters of designing laziness. They divide friction into 2 categories: negative friction, which stops good habits, and positive friction, which blocks bad habits. Example 1. Increase friction for your pocket casino. Let's be real. You aren't going to just decide not to look at your phone while working. It's too hard. So, increase the friction instead. A tech founder friend of mine has a strict rule. At exactly 8 a.m. every morning, he puts his phone inside a timed lockbox and leaves it downstairs. To absent-mindedly reach for his phone while he's trying to write code, he would have to stand up, walk down a flight of stairs, look at a locked box, and realize how silly he's being. The friction has been increased by 5 times. And because he is inherently lazy, he chooses to just keep working. His laziness literally protects his career. Example 2. Eliminate friction for wealth-generating habits. Do you want to write more, build a side business, or learn a high-paying skill? Don't wait until you're in the mood. Set up a deep work sanctuary the night before. Before you go to bed, close every single entertainment tab on your computer. Open the exact file or project you need to work on in full screen mode. Leave the laptop sitting right there on your desk. The next morning, when you walk over with your coffee, still half asleep, the only thing staring back at you is the work you already prepared. You don't have to waste any mental energy deciding what to do. The friction is gone. You just sit down and start. In the age of AI, where algorithms can write code and generate art in seconds, pure human focus has become the ultimate currency. Whoever can hold their attention on a single, deep task, wins. So, take a good look at the space around you right now. Your room is a perfect reflection of your bank account in the next 5 years. Are you designing it for a CEO? Or for a dopamine chaser? Because at the end of the day, the difference between someone who is busy all day but broke, and someone who works calmly but builds wealth, is often just how they arranged the items on their desk the night before.